Welcome back, everybody, to the Gentlemanly Things. I'm excited to kick off episode 2. And I wanted to first start by saying thank you all so much for the feedback so far from the first episode. If you remember last week, we gave some background about me and Henry Davidson and how I got into this and the whole concept of the show, and a little bit of a preview about what was going to be coming up. Today, I dive into a little bit about image consulting and your personal brand. My goal for today's conversation really is to get you thinking about things that you might be aware of, but not consciously thinking about on a daily basis, and why they matter and how they're going to impact your life. This show isn't about how to be a gentleman. It's about the art of living like one. I'm Brian Lipstein, and I'm your host of the Gentlemanly Things, where we explore the art of refined living one conversation at a time. Enjoy the episode. Let's start with, what is your image all about, and why does your image matter? And what role does clothing play in defining and communicating your image? Well, if you think about image, we often compare this to your personal brand. And we think about brands out in the marketplace like Nike and Apple and Starbucks. Why does a brand matter? Well, brands matter in the marketplace because they communicate something that's been built, a trust that's been built over time about how a product is going to perform or what kind of service you can expect every single time you visit somewhere, right? One of the profound brands in the service world is the Four Seasons. If you've heard about luxury hotels, knows that the Four Seasons is a luxury hotel. One of the brands in the world of service is the Ritz-Carlton. If you've ever read or heard anybody speak about the culture at the Ritz-Carlton, they build such a culture within their employees that it delivers a brand experience to the consumer that chooses to stay there, right? And so when it comes to a person, we are our brands, and we communicate, and we have to communicate with consistency, not just for our audience, but also for how we prepare our own mind and how we prepare ourselves. In the last episode, I had talked about attending this conference in Minneapolis, where I really went to take my test about certification, but ended up staying and learning and becoming fascinated by this industry of image consulting. And I learned for the first time, really, that it's about your appearance, your behavior, and your communication all together. I studied what I needed to study to pass that test. But it wasn't until I talked to other professionals who have been practicing this as a career for years and learned from them that I started to put the pieces together. And I started to say, okay, I see what you guys are doing. This woman over here is teaching etiquette. She's teaching how to shake hands and make introductions and how to pass out a business card, how to be on your cell phone. Imagine this, BlackBerries were still around at the time, right? How to have etiquette in a room and how what you do impacts the impression that you leave on somebody, and it could make or break the deal that you're trying to do if you aren't aware and you aren't practicing this the right way. So when we talk to clients, it's generally an approach about their wardrobe, but we do touch on these other elements because the whole puzzle has to fit together to get the right picture. If you're missing some of those key pieces, you may not be able to tell what that picture truly is, or you may have questions or doubts about the intention or the integrity behind it. We talk, and when a client comes in, generally we do this with a whiskey in hand or a drink of their choice if they desire, but we want it to be relaxing. We want it to get to the authenticity of who this person is, but we start to talk about, have you ever been in a situation where you started to realize that you weren't prepared the right way, that you were maybe underdressed or overdressed? And we talk about what the feelings were for them in that situation. But we start to drill it down into how that starts to play into their wardrobe. And one of the points I always ask somebody, and I'll ask you, I'll give you a moment to think about it, is how many times a day do you think you see your own reflection? And think about it. As you walk through your day, where are you seeing your reflection? How many times is it? You might be surprised to know that on average, we see our own reflection 55 times a day. Were you higher or lower? Be honest with yourself about it. Most of the people I ask this question to are way below 55. I get answers of 10, 20, 30. Sometimes I get answers of 100. Every so often, somebody's around the actual average number there. But most people aren't even aware of every time they see their own reflection. So when we talk about this, we talk about the subconscious brain, and we talk about the role that the subconscious brain is playing in our daily lives. And if you haven't seen the analogy, right, the iceberg analogy of the conscious versus the subconscious, right, we all can picture an iceberg that a little bit of it pops above the water, and then there's this huge amount that's down below the water, right? And when we talk about the iceberg, the conscious brain is the part that's above the water. It's the part we see. It's the part we're in tune with every day. The subconscious brain is the part that's below the water. It's big, it's powerful, and we have no idea that it even exists because we can't see it, and it's running very silently in the background. But it's influencing what we do all the time, even when we're asleep. When we talk about seeing our own reflection, we consciously see our reflection when we leave the house and we look in the mirror. We might go to the bathroom a few times throughout the day, look in the mirror, fix our hair. We might walk by a mirrored wall and actually stop and look at ourselves. But there's so many more times that we see our reflections subconsciously, where what we look at consciously is something through a pane of glass. If you're walking through the streets of any city and there's retail stores, you're looking at the mannequin and how it's dressed, but there's a reflection in the window and your subconscious brain sees that reflection. So on average, 55 times throughout the day, we're seeing our own reflection. And what that's doing is it's reinforcing the feeling of when we consciously saw our reflection and prepared ourselves for the day. So everybody should look in the mirror before they leave the house every morning. You should never leave without checking that everything's in its right place. And when you look in the mirror for that check, you have a feeling of, okay, I'm ready to take on the day, right? Or you have a feeling of, oh, I forgot that shirt I wanted to wear is in the laundry. Or I forgot that the sport coat I really had in my mind that would have been perfect for today's situation is at the dry cleaner. And so the feeling really becomes, yeah, I don't have it all with it. I'm not all with it today. I could be doing better, right? I want to be doing better, and I'm not meeting that standard. So you're either saying, I'm ready to tackle the day, or I'm just kind of showing up today. And 55 times more throughout the day, your brain is reinforcing that. So imagine that power that your brain 55 times throughout the day says, you got this. You're crushing it. You're ready for anything they throw at you. You are prepared. Or the flip side of that, 55 times more throughout the day, your brain is saying, today's not my day. I just really don't feel like being here today. I'm not going to put my full effort into that, task or that activity that I'm doing. It's a divide. You don't generally stay flat. You're either boosting yourself up or beating yourself down throughout the day. And it's all happening in your subconscious brain, reinforcing that feeling of how you prepared yourself to leave the house on that morning. Is that a little bit out there? Some people might say so. But for those that believe it and buy into it, you would be amazed how many clients have come back after we've helped them put all those puzzle pieces together and say, I closed the biggest deal of my life. I got the girl. We're getting engaged and we're getting married. I felt like $1 million on my wedding day. I put your sport coat on for the first time, and the clerk at Wawa commented on my coat. And that was a real comment from somebody who had never, ever been complimented on their clothing through their mid-50s. It's amazing, right? So that compliment now becomes another mirror as well, right? So not only are we seeing ourselves, but we see a mirror of how people react to us. And so when complete strangers start to compliment you, I talked about time in our last episode, and we'll talk about time a lot, but right, it's somebody taking time out of their day to notice you, and not just notice you, but give you positive feedback that you're doing the right thing. You're showing up the right way. You're standing out from the crowd for the right reasons. When you're getting those compliments, you stand a little taller, your shoulders go back, a rush of dopamine hits, and you're ready to tackle the next thing with confidence that comes at you, and you're going to tackle it better because you have that confidence. The flip side of that, when people aren't taking time out of their day, you aren't receiving that feedback, you're actually receiving it in a different way. But what I always say is, if somebody's not telling you to your face, they're probably talking about you behind your back. Right? So if you're doing something wrong, we all know it's rude to stop and say, hey, I don't know who you are, but you're really just not wearing the right thing. You're really just not showing up the right way. A complete stranger's not going to tell you that, but they might tell their friend later in the day, whoa, you won't believe what I saw. And so they're talking about you, and you're not getting that feedback. By not getting that feedback, or the absence of it, you are getting feedback in a certain way. So think about that, right? And think about the intentionality of getting dressed. You put on the right outfit for the right person that you're in front of for that day. What message are you trying to communicate? Are you trying to communicate that you are educated? Are you trying to communicate that you are successful? That you can handle what's thrown at you? That you pay attention to the details? That you come from a nice background? That you're not going to harm somebody? That's something that we'll dig into a little bit. But a lot of the way we present ourselves, the first reaction is fight or flight. That's the very first snap reaction that we see is this person safe? Do I see something of myself in them? Can I learn from them? Are we alike? And if you walk around most city streets, you are going to find certain people you naturally give a wider berth to, and certain people you look right past, and certain people stand out to you. Start to pay attention to that, right? But those that you give the wider berth to, are you doing it because you can smell them down the street? No. Something about the way they present themselves is probably telling you that this person might ask me something I don't want them to ask me. This person might harm me. This person might try to take from me, right? And it is mainly around the clothing. If the clothing is ripped, dirty, looks like it might be the only piece of clothing they have, right? We have to have compassion for the people on the street, but our natural brain reaction is, let's steer a little bit more clear, right? And then you have, imagine the guy, businessman or businesswoman, walking down the street in a suit. You don't probably think twice that they're going to harm you, but there are certainly people that wear suits. And if you look at the movies historically, some of the most notorious gangsters in movies wore suits. Does that mean that they are trustworthy? Not always, but our snap decision when we first make that judgment is, this person probably won't harm me. It's an interesting psychology there, right? And we're communicating a lot about who we are and about our background based on our image, based on the way we show up. We have this feedback loop within our own brain. We have both the conscious psychology and then the subconscious psychology. And then we have the reactions with the people that we interact with being another mirror to us. And getting those compliments will certainly, right, play a big role in increasing your confidence. So dressing for the part, we talked about, right? What message are you trying to communicate? Who are you going to be in front of? We talk about dressing for the time of year. Are you wearing the right fabric for the weather? Is it, you wouldn't wear a flannel in the middle of summer, and you wouldn't typically wear linen in the middle of winter, at least up here in the Northeast where we are. And that would communicate the wrong thing if you did, right? So again, what is that message? And the biggest thing behind it is, are you trustworthy, and do you pay attention to the detail? Right? If you can't pay attention to the detail within yourself first, the unspoken message that goes to your audience is, if you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of the job? How can you take care of the task? How can I believe that what you're telling me you're so good at is actually true? right? And that's where that message has to align. And you'll find that you will get business done more quickly when those messages are in line with each other. So, right, that's a little bit of the psychology behind image. It's really just touching the surface of it. There's so much more we can talk about when it comes to color. When we see color, we actually react emotionally to colors. So I can affect the way you feel in a certain situation, or if I know what the feeling of the situation is going to be, I can affect that in a certain way underlying just by choosing what colors I wear. Same thing with patterns. We can trick the eye when it comes to patterns. One of the easy things, here's a great piece of advice I give all the time, a little bit of free consulting for you guys here on the show. Most men don't know how to combine patterns. So they either go with all solids, which is boring and plain sometimes. Sometimes it's crisp and professional and it's the right thing to do. But a lot of guys want to get out of their shell. They want to experiment a little bit more, but they're afraid. They don't know how to do it, right? And so the first and easiest way to do this is learning how to combine patterns. So imagine this. You have two orientations of patterns. You have horizontal, draws the eye left and right. You have vertical, pinstripes, would draw the eye up and down. And when you are going to mix two pieces that would be the same orientation. So if you had a check and a plaid, so plaid on the sport coat and a check on the shirt, one has to be large scale, the other has to be small. So you have to vary the scale of the size of the pattern when you're mixing like patterns. If you're mixing different orientations, so mixing a check and a pinstripe, you don't have to worry about the scale. Those two patterns don't compete with each other. They're not going to blend together. Right? The key being that you want to see where one garment ends, the lines of one garment ends, and the lines of the next garment begin. Right? They need to stand apart from each other and not blend together. So when you're combining patterns, you do that by varying scale in the same orientation or differing the orientation so that the eye has a clear break as to where to go. Very simple, easy theory there that if you follow that, you'll start to be able to combine patterns and have a little bit more fun. You'll start to get noticed a little bit more because you're not just blending in with the same old blue and gray solids that most people default to. Try it. Experiment a little bit. Knowing when to follow the rules and knowing when to break the rules is what it's all about. There's a time to follow the rules. There's a time for that solid navy or charcoal suit, that solid white shirt, and a nice tie. And then there's a time to go ahead and wear 3 or 4 patterns in a garment. I remember an article I read years ago called 4 Pattern Bingo. They said in the article, it talked about most people can't accomplish this. But if you're talking about 4 pieces, the suit, the jacket, the shirt, the tie, and the pocket square, most people say between that have maximum of 2 patterns. You can do 4 patterns between all 4 of those if done correctly. And when done correctly, it's very visually pleasing. If you tried to do it and it's not correct, your audience, their eye doesn't know where to go. It doesn't know where to look. It becomes a distraction, and the words you're trying to speak don't get heard. Right? So when we talk about this image, we talk about being a leader. We want to lead, and leaders are leaders because they influence people. So we want to lead with influence. We want to be able to make sure our words land. We want to make sure they're heard. We want to make sure they're respected and trusted. And when things are out of place, that starts to get questioned, right? And so, we can get into more leadership stuff in a later episode and talk about image consulting, and maybe we'll have a guest on that really has specialized in corporate leadership and corporate leadership training, that has done some training with me. She is amazing, an amazing trainer from the UK. And I have so much respect for her. I would love to have her as a guest. But when she's on, we'll dive into that topic of leadership and executive presence and bring you guys some value through that. I just want to touch on the surface today. I really want to bring the idea of image consulting to the surface. I want to have you start recognizing what personal brand is all about, but more importantly, why it matters. And when you start to practice this and you start to pay attention to the details, I want you to notice the results that come from it. These elements, if they're overlooked, you're just leaving money on the table. To be honest with you, you're leaving money on the table. This is a tool in our toolbox of business tools that we control 100%. Unlike working on a team project, unlike relying on technology, you dress yourself every single morning. Nobody tells you what to wear. Nobody tells you that you can't wear this or shouldn't wear that. You choose. Now, there are some things they will tell you can't wear. Generally, those are the things that are going to avoid the negative aspect of what I'm talking about. But to the positive side, really, and let's dig into this a little bit. This is an interesting topic that we often talk about. So there's a quote by Oscar Wilde that I really love. And he says, "You can never be overdressed or overeducated." And I always say, let's take that with a grain of salt. Let's dive into that a little bit. Let's dissect that. I think you can be overdressed if the goal of the situation is to create a relationship with somebody and you come in dressed to the nines and they're dressed casually or even less than casual. You're going to create a divide that's going to make your audience feel uncomfortable. And if you're creating that divide and they're uncomfortable, you're not able to build that relationship. Right? So you could be overdressed in that sense, but you as the more dressed person can always peel off layers. You can always take the jacket off. You can always loosen or take off the tie. You can bring yourself closer to the level of your audience to make them feel comfortable. And then you start to build that relationship. But here's the key. You weren't overdressed because you showed up and the first impression that you left was the best first impression you could leave. While that person may feel uncomfortable at first, they're looking up to you as somebody that they trust, as somebody that is going to be honest with them, as somebody that's successful, that maybe can help them out. Those are all the positive impressions you're leaving when you show up making that first impression. And then you just peel it down, come down to their level, and now you can connect on that relationship. Let's flip that around, right? Say that you're the one pitching the business and you walk in, in a polo shirt and khakis. And the person you're meeting with is in a suit and a tie. Now you feel underdressed. You're not making that best first impression, and you can't just materialize a suit and tie out of nowhere and come up to their level, right? So it's always better to come in over prepared. You can peel down, you can create, you can read the room, and you can adjust. And that's why I think the idea of you can't be overdressed really plays into that role. Let's talk about dress codes for companies with this. This is one of my favorite topics. You'll see me light up about it here. People all the time say, well, my office is business casual, but I want to dress better. I like to dress better. I feel better when I'm dressed. Everything I'm talking about here. They feel funny, though, overdressing or outdressing their peers. And so because the dress code says you can get away with wearing khakis and a polo shirt, they often won't go and say, well, let me put on a button-down shirt and a sport coat. Or I won't wear that suit to work. Because when they wear the suit to work or they show up overdressed per the dress code, people say, well, where are you interviewing? What event do you have tonight? Where are you going? They start getting questioned, and people don't like to be questioned. They don't want to be put in the spotlight necessarily. But they want to feel that way. So they're not doing it for attention. They're doing it because they perform better in their own way. And they take their work seriously, and they want that to be part of it. So when we talk about a dress code, right, a dress code is a minimum requirement. It just says you can't show up looking less than this, but doesn't generally say you can't show up looking better than this, right? You'll get sent home if you show up in ripped jeans and a t-shirt that has profanity on it, but you won't generally get sent home if you show up in a sport coat and all they want you in is a polo shirt. And what's going to happen is you will get chided a little bit. People are going to ask you those questions at first, but then if you continue to do it consistently, remember back to what I talked about at the beginning of this episode, we talked about why are brands brands, because they do it consistently. right? So you start to show up consistently, and all of a sudden, management's looking at you for that promotion. All of a sudden, your coworkers are coming to you to say, hey, I've got a function to go to this weekend. Can you give me some advice? The kidding stops, the questions stop. It becomes your brand. You become known as the person that shows up looking good, the person that knows how to put themselves together, the person I'm going to go to for advice when I have to do that because I don't know how to do it clearly for myself. This is your coworker, not me. I was that person at one point, but I educated myself. And so, right, everybody can learn what's going on here. Everybody can learn these strategies. Everybody can learn why it matters. It's what is going to set you apart is, are you intentional about it? Do you put thought into it every morning? Do you go through your day looking at, well, who's the most important meeting that I have? Who's the most important person I'm meeting with that day? And do you dress to that level with that intention? And even if there's maybe a light day, maybe you have no meetings, do you still choose to maintain that consistency? It's up to you. It's your choice. Nobody's telling you you can or can't do it when you walk in your closet in the morning. Nobody's looking over your shoulder saying you can't wear that today unless it's below the minimum. So, right, keep in mind that you have this tool. You control it 100%. And if you're not thinking of it as a tool, you're definitely leaving money on the table. You're not closing deals. You're not getting what you want. You're not having influence in the way you might think you have influence or the way you might want to have influence. And so I encourage you, be intentional. Think about your personal brand. It matters. And it's something that's built with consistency over time. So the minimum of what you do is going to be what is remembered. If you get 95% of it right, the 5% that you're missing is the 5% somebody focuses on and they miss the 95% of good that you did. So you have to have the whole puzzle put together to see the whole picture. And if you don't know how to do that, that's where we specialize. Just like I didn't know how to do a podcast. I hired a coach. I hired people that know how to do this. I have a team that's helping me. I tell people all the time, I'm your coach for your brand. Trust me. I'm here to hold you accountable. I'm here to help educate you. I'm here to help elevate you. I'm here to see results with you. And, if you want to be a speaker, you hire a speaking coach. If you want to be better at sales, you hire a sales coach. If you want to be a better athlete, you have a coach, you have a trainer. The best athletes are the ones that dedicate themselves, but also hire professionals who specifically do what they do to hold them accountable and to elevate them in ways that they don't know how to elevate themselves. So keep that in mind. Really fun topic about dress codes, a little bit of advice about how to combine patterns. And this is just really, like I said, scratching the surface on a lot of the topics of image that we talk about. Hopefully something in this resonated with you, whether you're on this track, whether you've thought about this track, whether you think you're going down the track and you're just kind of lost. Happy to have a conversation about it. Thanks for listening today. I appreciate your time as always. Please follow us, share with friends, leave comments, like us, leave a review. And I look forward to seeing you again on next week's episode of The Gentlemanly Things.